Power to the truth. This is Margo. This is Saturday, January 19th, 2019. It's 4:38 p.m. Pacific Time, United States of America. And CAM's just released another day's worth of data on methane. It just now came up, and it's from Friday the 18th, so I'm using that as the base time. And we saw Thursday yesterday, and I've got the Arctic view pulled up surface level. So I've already loaded this up, so it'll run a little bit faster now. So it'll stop jumping on the next round through. So we've got data for Friday, and then it's in the forecast period for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And so here it's starting over. Here's what was happening on Friday. We saw a release here in the Kara Sea, and now in the forecast period we can see more bursts of the dark methane coming up in that Kara Sea all around to the east side of Novaya Zemlya. Okay, let's look at this. Let's go back to the beginning of Friday, and so we can see kind of what's going on. And I'll just go forward like in 3-hour increments. Okay, so at 300 UTC time, here's what they have showing. They're showing a dark release of methane on the coast here of Siberia, and then right in along that ridge, and a wave of this red just coming up from the land, and it's like a wave that, and we saw that it was moving across, and so it's continuing. This wave is continuing, and then 3 hours forward we can see it's still releasing. Then that's at 12 hours UTC, so it's kind of swirling around. And this is at 15 hours UTC. It's still swirling. There's 18 UTC. So it's coming up in a swirling pattern, it looks like. 21 UTC. And then it's 0 UTC for Saturday. And then it's starting to release some more there. So let's go ahead and let this movie run now. We're seeing a lot of dark methane coming up over in the Finland area, and then northern Russia is a big patch that seems to kind of grow and sit there, and then it's coming up more from the surface in northern Russia. And we've talked about that. Could be from mining, it can be from the melting permafrost, it can be from cutting down of trees, it can be from lots of different things up there on land, but where it's coming up out of the water, it's coming up from the ocean floor, coming up to the surface and through whatever sea ice is there. And as we showed in past videos, there's no sea ice to this west side of Novaya Zemlya and down through down into the North Atlantic. That's an area where the sea ice is struggling because the sea surface temperature is extremely warm there. So I thought I'd just let that run through for you a couple of times so that you can see that. And it's still bursting up in the forecast period. These bursts coming up in this Kara Sea here in the dark red, which would be at least 2140 parts per billion up to 10,000 parts per billion. That's the top of the line. So I'm going to pause that now. And I also have the global view, and this is at 500 HPA, and the base time is for Friday with the latest data. And I've loaded this movie up for you to see how when you go up higher in the atmosphere, this is about halfway up, it's about 18,000 feet up into the atmosphere, how it gathers. It's gathering in the Arctic because the air is colder and it gathers at this level where it's colder. But look at the darker, that's into this dark color, that highest color on the ledger, and is just gathering and spreading out over the Arctic. And see, it's especially right here by Novaya Zemlya where we saw it coming up off the surface. It's also dark over here in northern Canada, and also over here on the eastern part of Russia. So there was a comment that showed up under my since yesterday about showing methane at 500 HPA, which it's fine with me. I know a lot of climate scientists like to see it at the higher level where it's dispersed more through the atmosphere, and we can see that it's pretty much continuous over this whole northern hemisphere at least this 2100 parts per billion reading and higher. And then like this gold color is 2160, and then the orange is 2060, and then the orange is 2080. So it's well above 2000 parts per billion in the northern hemisphere. 2000 is here on this green color. That green color, that light chartreuse, is 2000. Between 2000 and 220. So we can safely say the whole northern hemisphere is at least 2000 parts per billion and higher, according to CAMS. So I'm going to pause that, and we're going to go right to comments and then to earthquakes. So Sensible Hair says, thanks Margo. You're welcome, Sensible Hair. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your comment. This was under my video from yesterday about mercury being released from melting permafrost. Then Dave Harris leaves a couple of comments. He says, thank you again, Margo. I just watched a video which addressed the massive amounts of carbon in the Arctic. There is no chance of surviving what is happening. Correct. I'm in full agreement with your advice to make peace with our Creator. The massive release of amount of mercury was already known. I will place a link which was published by the National Geographic back in February of 2018. And this was probably the original article that all those spin-off articles came off of. And because it's the same information as what I shared yesterday. If people want to click on that link, they can go there. The methane on the seafloor is likely being released from melting of the seafloor, as there are large amounts of heat entering from the Atlantic. Svalbard is especially ice-free, and the ice in the Kara Sea is quite thin. The following video is quite interesting, and the speaker giving the talk states that if 1/2 of 1% of the Arctic carbon stores are released, it will double the carbon emissions. What of the other 99.5%? The changes are ominous. Thank you once again for the time you spend making these videos. Once again, God bless you. And then he says, just realized I forgot to include the link on the climate state video. It's a bit technical, but there is certainly some good info. Anyway, here it is. And there's the link. It's a YouTube video. And people can go there and watch that if they want to. Thank you, Dave Harris, for viewing and leaving that comment and the links and your observations. I totally agree. And we're in a deep world of trouble, and it's not just from carbon. And we've got all these dominoes lined up which represent all these different things and different feedback loops and different problems, and when one goes, they're all just going to start falling. And we're in the middle of it right now. And if you or any of my other viewers have not checked out Immanuel Velikovsky, he was a Russian psychiatrist, philosopher, historian, and he wrote a lot of books about worlds in collision, how we've been through this kind of thing before. We've been through mass extinctions before, and the memories of it are stored in our collective subconscious minds, and we're being triggered as we're entering into or well into the next mass extinction. Those subconscious memories or unconscious memories are being triggered, and we're feeling real panicky, and a lot of chaos is going to happen. But I started reading, I think I did 4 parts of his book called Mankind in Amnesia, and you can go back and look through my videos. I think I have a playlist of it. Mankind in Amnesia by Immanuel Velikovsky. I was going to read the whole book in parts. I got through the preface in the first chapter and petered out. But it's available on Amazon. I recommend people get that book and read it, and he speaks a lot of common sense, and it's soothing to me to understand about these things and to understand about the human psyche, and that people will be going crazy from this stuff, and we're seeing it. We're seeing people just going off at the slightest little thing, and I'm thinking it's because of this energy of what's happening as things are ramping up. But you might want to check that out. So thanks for being here. God bless you too, Dave Harris. And then Dean from Poetry of Predicament says, "Hi Margo, you mentioned a person on Twitter who posts about Arctic ice. Would you reply by spelling their Twitter name?" I tried my own spelling, but I was wrong. Thank you for your work, Dean. I'd say, "Hi Dean, here's Zach Labe's Twitter page. Thanks for tuning in." And here's the link to his Twitter page. And it's at ZLABE. That's his Twitter name. So, but I just put the link there. And that's for people who want to see the latest on sea ice. He tracks Arctic and Antarctic sea ice. He is a climatology student, and so this is what he does. That's his whole life is tracking, and he makes all these charts and stuff a lot better than I can. So I recommend people follow him. And thanks for tuning in, Dean, and thanks for the comment. And Tor Werner says, "Great presentation." Thank you, Tor. Thank you for your comment, and thank you for listening and viewing. Then Dingle Jack, who's one of my scientific viewers, says, "You do such a good and thorough job, Margo. I really like your show." Thank you, Dingle Jack. I appreciate that. The surface methane in China and India is primarily from coal and natural gas mining that generates a lot of methane. Yeah, we had talked about that. There's also a lot of surface methane in the U.S. for the same reason, but I don't claim to understand why there are also periodic bursts there. Methane that makes it up high in the atmosphere is more persistent and exerts its warming potential, which is why concentrations at 500 HPA are more of a concern. So, I think it's all a concern, but yeah, 500 HPA, that's why I was showing that. And so it's really, the whole northern hemisphere is just covered with it. And as far as why there are bursts in the United States, let's just look. Let's get North America on the map. Oh, it looks like a mess, doesn't it? Well, they're in the middle of that big storm that's moving across the country. And I know, you know, in the more humid areas, then there's going to be more methane too. This may take a little while for this to load. Let me close this other one out. But the humid part starts kind of around this midline, and then as you move towards the east, it gets more humid because it goes further down in sea level and altitude. And so but then you've got, look at California is just covered up in black. That's not loading very well. Let's do a refresh here. And I think it's bursting because it could be in the more populated regions, because look at Florida, it's covered up. And you know, we have a lot of areas in the United States which are not very populated, like out here in the western part. I mean, it's a long way between towns, but over on the eastern side, it's more densely populated. So let's just go back, because that's not going to load. So just looking at this one picture here, we can see that it's just coming up in sporadic places, but it does end up kind of covering everything as the movie goes. I think it'll, if we can just get one day to go, we can see. Oh, now it's going. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but okay, this is a good view here. We can see like this whole part of East Texas, and that's a very humid area. And then the coast, and that's oil drilling along the coast. And then this is all humid, and that's all I can think of, and where it's a lot of populated areas. And like Florida, that's all humid, and a lot of it is real swampy, and it's very heavily populated there. And then California, of course, they're having a storm right now. So I think it's because it's more populated areas too. So I'm going to leave that and get back to our comments. I don't want this show to go real long today. David Alcock says the mercury is rising in more ways than one is the perfect positive feedback. Absolutely. Another perfect positive feedback. Thank you, David. Oh, and thank you, Dinglejack, for your comment and for hanging in there with me on all of this stuff. Sultan Bev is another one of my scientifically minded viewers, and comments about the CO2 equivalent. CH4, or methane, is equivalent to CO2 at the following rates. First year of release is 112 times. Fifth year of release is 86 times. 100th year of release is 5 times at most. I generally use the 86 times figure. Thus, current CO2 is 430 parts per million. Current CH4 is about 1900 parts per billion, or 1.9 ppm. Thus 1.9 times 86 equals 163 ppm equivalent. Add that to the 413 and you get 576 ppm. That makes sense, Sultan Bev. And that's if we're at 1900 average parts per billion worldwide. I heard that it might be more like 2000. I did hear that. So if that's true, then we'd have to up that number. But that's a good formula, and that makes sense. So you just got an in-between number there. Thank you. We appreciate it. But that's still way high. It's way high for carbon dioxide equivalent. Then Fred Blogs says the volcanically active line that goes right up the middle of the Atlantic is just about there. So it may be undersea volcanoes. And then he puts a link to universetoday.com about the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And it's a very informative website, and I went to it, and I'll be studying that. Thank you, Fred Blogs, for your observations and for the link. And I agree. I think there are undersea volcanoes all over the place, and that's one area that's not reported on with the climatologists, and I think it's an area that needs to be reported on because it's a missing piece of the puzzle and could add a lot of information for us. So it very well could be that that warming in the Arctic can be from undersea volcanoes. So now let's get right over to our earthquake report. By the way, EMSC, which is the European Earthquake Reporting System, their website is down. It was down when I got up this morning for whatever reason. And so we're depending on USGS today. So I have the last 24 hours, all magnitudes pulled up, and we're showing 221 earthquakes worldwide. Of course, it's the weekend, so a lot of the earthquake makers are off work, and this is Martin Luther King weekend. So Monday will be a holiday for a lot of the earthquake makers too. So, but we do have the eclipse coming up tomorrow night. Not tonight, but tomorrow night. So we're still under that influence. And the influence of the eclipse can last for a while afterwards too. So I hopped over to 24 hours for 2.5 magnitude and higher, and it's showing 29 earthquakes worldwide. So the first ones to fall off the map are this 2.6 over here in Puerto Rico, and then these two, there were two that showed up on this northern East Pacific rise. Remember, there was a 6.0 over here yesterday, and then we had two more. Since then, we had a 4.4 yesterday at 6:15 p.m., 10 kilometers deep, and a 4.6 at 6:24 p.m., 10 kilometers deep. Now the time I'm stating is Pacific time. So we started there. So while we're there, let's go over to this one that's showing up off the coast of El Salvador, right on this red line. It was a 4.3 that happened at 7:12 p.m. last night, 10 kilometers deep. Here's this one down in South America. It's right on the northern end of Argentina. That happened, it was a 4.6 near Abra Pampa, Argentina. It happened at 2:55 this morning, 254 kilometers deep. So that was quite deep. Now let's come around to the Western Pacific or the Southern Southwest Pacific. We had a 4.8 near Raoul Island, New Zealand. 264 kilometers deep. That happened at 8:14 p.m. last night. Then there was a 4.7 near New Caledonia, 10 kilometers deep, last night at 9:40 p.m. Then here was one on land at Papua New Guinea. It says it was 111 kilometers west-southwest of Porgera, Papua New Guinea. It happened at 10:37 this morning, 44 kilometers deep. I don't see any major towns around there, so probably it didn't cause that much damage. but an earthquake like that could cause damage, definitely, depending on what kind of structures were around there. Here was a 5.1 in Tobelo, Indonesia at 6:03 this morning, 56 kilometers deep, and a 4.6 near Tobelo at 3:12 this morning, 10 kilometers deep. Then up here was one near Guam, a 5.1 near Maritzo Village, Guam. That happened at 10:09 this morning, 8.2 kilometers deep. We can see it was right on that red line. And Guam is a very small island here. So that's where it was near. So the people on Guam probably felt that. It probably didn't cause any damage though. Then moving on over, there was a 4.3 near Shugnon, Tajikistan at 1:56 p.m. today, 105 kilometers deep, and a 4.1 near Jarm, Afghanistan at 1:37 this morning, 141 kilometers deep. Then we had a 4.3 near Yasuj, Iran at 1:15 p.m. today, 10 kilometers deep. Then here was another one off the coast of Greece, near Latakia, Greece. It was a 4.4 at 9:42 this morning, 39 kilometers deep. Then coming up here off the coast of Kamchatka, Russia, was a 4.2 at 1:07 this morning, 10 kilometers deep. While we're up here, let's go on up to Alaska. And so we're still in the 2.5 magnitude and higher range. There was a 3.1 near Redoubt volcano and a 3.7 near Redoubt volcano. This one came in at 9:25 this morning and was 122 kilometers deep. And then a 2.6 near Tok, Alaska. So this whole region, all these Aleutian Islands and going up into Alaska, is active with a lot of volcanoes and also a lot of earthquakes. But there are active volcanoes through here and dormant volcanoes that can come back to life here. So that's something to keep an eye on, definitely. Let's go up to Alaska now with all magnitudes and see what we've got. We've got 74 on the map here of all magnitudes. And so we only saw 3 that were above 2.5 magnitude. And so the rest of these are small, you know, in the ones range, and mainly in the ones and a few 2s. But let's look at this pattern of these small ones, because the small ones are showing movement and activity, and they're peppered all the way up and kind of in a line going up through the mid part of the state, coming up from this Anchorage area. And if we zoom in on Anchorage, we're seeing 30 in the viewing area here. So the number, these small earthquakes are decreasing in number here, but they're spreading out now. It looks like that movement has spread out. So now let's go to Hawaii next. Since we're over here in the Pacific, we're showing 13 volcanoes. Why do I keep saying volcanoes? Earthquakes. I'll just call them off. 2.3, 1.8, 1.9, 1.9, 2.0, 2.8, 1.8, 2.3, 1.7, 1.9, 1.9, 1.8, and 2.4. So there's those in Hawaii. Now let's go over to the Dominican Republic. We've got 14 here today, and I'll just call out the ones 3 and higher. There was a 3.0 near Boca de Yuma. Here's a 3.2 near Roadtown, British Virgin Islands. 3.3 near Miches, Dominican Republic. And 3.5 near Roadtown, British Virgin Islands. And the rest were 2s and 1s. So that's not big enough to do damage, but it's still showing movement. Now going over here to the United States, we have this one in Kansas, a 2.6 that showed up near Mankato, Kansas at 8:35 p.m. last night, 10 kilometers deep. We've got one up here south of Seattle, a 1.8 near Tacoma, Washington, that came in this morning at 8:52 a.m., 15 kilometers deep. We're not showing, well, they're not showing anything in the Yellowstone area. Utah looks pretty quiet, although down here at Enterprise we're still showing 4 down here at Enterprise. They're small, 1.9 and under. So there's that. Here's one that is, we don't see them up here very often. This is right near Redding, California, directly to the northwest. It was a 2.1 that happened at 3:23 p.m. today, 21 kilometers deep. Let's look at Nevada next. Nothing showing up in the Reno area or in the Carson City area. I'll just pick out some of the bigger ones. Here was a 2.1 in the Hawthorne area. And then the rest are going to be under those. I'm not going to go through all of those. We know that this is the Nevada test site, and there's underground stuff going on all the time there. So I'm not going to keep on reporting on all of those. It's just a fact of life. Now over here, there was a 2.1 that showed up near Angwin, California at 5 p.m. today at a minus 0.6 kilometers depth. So that was up in the mountain. So if that's not from a blast, and it says it wasn't from a blast, This is from magma movement or some kind of movement causing shaking up inside the mountain, up above the ground. That's what that minus kilometer depth means. Then the rest of these are at geysers. So we have 7 up at the geysers today, and they're 2.3 is the highest, and they're all under that. The rest of them. Now down here near San Francisco, here's a 2.1 near Discovery Bay that happened at 7 o'clock this morning, 15 kilometers deep. And here was a 1.5 that happened near Sunol at 9:06 this morning, 7 kilometers deep. Let's come on down this San Andreas fault line, this straight red line. 2.5 near San Juan Bautista at 1:41 p.m. today, 5 kilometers deep. 2.2 near Pinnacles. Here's a 2.5 near Parkfield. So we'll look at Southern California in a second. Let's come back up here to this other side. Here was a 1.4 on the other side of the California border. That's coming on down into the Mammoth Lakes area. Here's a 0.6 at Bridgeport. Look, here's one right in the middle of Mono Lake, 1.3. And then this is the Long Valley area. We're showing 10 right here. They're pretty small. They're 1s and under, but look, they're kind of like here's Mammoth Lakes, and the Long Valley caldera comes down here. So this is showing movement in these areas. Then what's this down here? Here's a 1.4 at Little Lake and a 0.7 at Coso Junction. See, these are areas that have earthquakes repeatedly, over and over and over. Okay, I got this one at Parkfield. Here's one on the red line, a 1.6 near Simler. I didn't mean to do that. Then down here in Southern California, we have one down in Baja, a 1.5. And then the rest of them are in California. And we've got 55 on the map here today. And a large majority of them are down here at the southern end of the Salton Sea. And these are 2s and under, it looks like today. But I was watching Dutch Sense this morning, and he showed a close-up of this area, and there are geothermal pumping operations down here, and he thinks that's what's causing all these earthquakes, because we saw a whole bunch here in the last week or so. Right here on this map are 5, and the largest one is the 2.2 right there, and we see one right in the Salton Sea there. And then the other large cluster of earthquakes are over here near Kauai. There are 20 right here. And I think Dutch Sense has pointed out that there are drilling operations over there. You can watch his videos and get more detail, because I don't go into that much detail. 2.0 at Julian, and they're just peppered around in this Southern California area. But they're small, so it does release pressure, but it also shows movement, and it shows weak points in the Earth's crust where these earthquakes come up. Okay, we got that one. So let's zoom out and see if any new earthquakes came in while we were doing this report. We got that 2.6 at Tok, Alaska. We got the 4.3 in Tajikistan. We got that. I think we got them all. Got the Iran one. Sometimes these come in, well, they're posted hours later than the time they actually happened, so you kind of have to look back through. That's why sometimes there's more, but they might not be that recent. So I think that's it for today. I hope everyone has a good weekend and get some rest and relaxation and whatever they need to get done. And if you've got a long weekend coming up, you can enjoy the extra time off and get ready for the eclipse tomorrow night. So I love you all very much. I do believe that time is short. No one knows the day or the hour, and what's important is that we keep our minds and hearts focused on spiritual things and get ready to leave the planet. I love you all very much. Until next time, God bless you. Go in peace and good night.